Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last couple of years. And from what I gather, they are doing quite a wide variety of different styles, and they've won quite a few awards in recent times, so it is about time that we review one of their beers here on the channel. Now, the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy. It's a style that these guys are supposed to be very good at, and one that was recommended to me by someone who I really trust when it comes to the Japanese beer scene. So, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Ishikawa Prefecture, which is kind of on the other side of Japan from Tokyo if you go over to the west, and to be specific we're going to go to Kanazawa City, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brew Classic. So this particular beer is simply called Dank. It comes in at 7% ABV, and this one is a West Coast IPA. So yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up from the wonderful liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Emaichi here in Osaka. Lovely little beer shop run by Koji along with his daughter Rika, who's doing most of the work these days because Koji is a little bit older, but they've always got a great selection of Japanese beers, and I always go up there and get a few things when I come over to Japan. So yeah, this is yet another new brewery that I haven't tried anything from before, as I said, and it's always cool to introduce new Japanese breweries to you here on the channel as well. And we've got a few for you during this little Japanese mini-series that I've been doing. But yeah, make sure you check out the link to Liquor Shop Asahiya in the video description below, and do go and visit them if you find yourself here in Osaka, because it's a really great place actually, and lovely people behind it. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do in the future, hopefully from Brew Classic. Very first time they are featuring on the channel, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting beers on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Brew Classic for the first time. So, Brew Classic, as I've mentioned to you already, are based near the port in Kanazawa City in Ishikawa Prefecture in Japan. Kind of surprised that I'm still getting this beer actually, because Ishikawa was where the big earthquake happened a few months ago, where the epicenter of it was. But the founder of the company is Kanazawa local Sakao Takanori. So apparently he discovered Sam Adams' Boston Lager while he was studying for his MBA, and this sparked his interest in craft beer. This led to him researching lots of different beer styles and, you know, the flavour profiles and things like this, trying lots of different beer, and then this evolved into researching different breweries across the world. And what he really liked was the way that all of them were kind of rooted in their local community, and he wanted to bring this idea back with him to his hometown. So after working regular jobs for a while in Tokyo, he trained in brewing at Mount Fuji Brewing with the goal of opening his own brewery, and then he moved back to Kanazawa in 2018. So he used crowdfunding to help fund the project, initially raising over 4 million yen, and the brewery was granted its license to brew in December of 2021, and the first beers were released across the first few months of 2022. So they opened in quite a difficult time, of course, because Japan was under lockdown at that time. But the brewery is named after the fact that they want to produce beers that will one day be considered classics, and you know, they want the brewery to be loved by the locals essentially. But over the last few years, they've been gradually increasing their brewing capacity, building up their sales and distribution, and also developing new recipes. And as of July 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 100 different beers according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to grow as time goes on. But yeah, to have produced 100 beers in, you know, what about, would that be like about 2.5 years of production? That's pretty good going actually. That's near enough one new beer every week, just short of that actually. So yeah, we need to keep an eye on this brewery and see what they're doing, because this was the very first time I encountered one of their beers actually. I just picked this one up because I didn't know the brewery. That was the main reason. It was also a West Coast IPA, which I do like. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Brew Classic for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have produced. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. The can's sweating a little bit obviously because it's been nice and cool in the fridge, and then we're bringing it out to the warmer room. But yeah, the artwork on this one reminds me, it's a little bit of like a kaleidoscope type artwork there as well. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. This one is 350 millilitres. And it didn't actually say, I couldn't get any information on what hops or anything were used in this one, but it is simply called Dank. It's a West Coast IPA, it's 7% ABV. So yeah, I think this is a nice introduction to this brewery. So yeah, let's get this beer out into the glass and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious about this one actually. I actually hadn't heard of Brew Classic until I came across their beers in Asahiya. As I say, I just like to cover as many Japanese breweries on the channel as we can. But yeah, anyway, there's the beer out and into the glass. So you can see we got everything out there. The beer's poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. Some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the beer, but you can see it gets really quite foamy the further up that you go. I think to you guys on the camera, but I noticed the screen when I film in here goes a little bit darker. The videos are always a little bit brighter than I think. But yeah, I think to you guys, this one maybe appears a little bit more, you know, like yellowy and creamy almost, but to the naked eye it's actually, yeah, pretty foamy and creamy. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass in this one, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it looks pretty nice, this one, I would say. So colour wise, we're talking like a kind of, yeah, bright golden yellow colour, this one, which is quite interesting. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but that can vary from, you know, yeah, that you don't often have to, it can vary a little bit, but you don't often have to care about it when it comes to IPAs of any description really. But yeah, when it comes to the West Coast IPA, for me, these beers can lean one or two ways. They can be more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing, or they can be a little bit more like oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. So yeah, those are my two kind of benchmark American West Coast IPAs. But going by the colour of this one, I think that it's most likely to lean toward the more bready, biscuity end of the spectrum. But I'm also wondering, from the colour of this and the appearance of it, if it's maybe more of an American IPA rather than being specifically West Coast or New England, because it has that little bit of natural haze to it, but there may well be a little bit of wheat in this one. But with the West Coast IPAs, they tend to use primarily barley malt in their malt base, whereas New England IPAs will use oat and wheat as well, and that's what gives them the haziness. So yeah, the haziness on this one looks a little bit more intense, if you like, than what you might get from simply not filtering the beer. So yeah, we'll just need to see with this one going forward. But in any case, it looks kind of in line with what you would expect of a modern IPA these days. But yeah, I don't think we really need to say too much more about the appearance. The only other thing would be that that head has faded away now, and you've got that nice kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. But let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then, and see what it's all about. I am very, very curious about this. Yeah, interesting. Really soft, very wet and juicy aroma, this one. I think this is going to be nice, actually. Yeah, very soft, yeah, fruity, juicy sort of thing. I'm thinking from the aroma, this probably is going to be more of an American IPA rather than being West Coast. And when we talk about American IPAs, as we call them these days, I would say that they're somewhere in between the West Coast and the New England. You know, sometimes they've got a bit of wheat or oat in there, sometimes they have a slightly higher bitterness than a New England IPA will. Sometimes they've got a bit of the kind of West Coasty sweetness or the West Coasty bitterness and stuff, as I say. So yeah, somewhere in the middle. I've got a feeling this beer might be along those lines. But it's giving you everything you would expect from a modern IPA, to be honest with you. You've got that little bit of malty backbone, you've got the nice green component in there, the soft, kind of fruity, juicy sort of thing. Yeah, I think it goes together quite nicely, in fact. So, yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer then, it feels, you know, the aroma of this one actually feels quite familiar. There's something a wee bit kind of almost nostalgic about this particular beer. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You can smell that right away. But on top of that, you've got a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker. So yeah, a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker, little touch of woodiness in there, fresh kind of white bready hedgehog roll bread crust, like I was saying. But yeah, fluffy, maybe a little touch of brown bread in this one. Fluffy white bread as well. On top of that, you get a little bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit. So yeah, a wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. I don't get so much in the way of sweetness out of this one, which is quite interesting, because normally with a West Coast IPA, or you would expect that little bit of sweetness, but this one's really more kind of bready leaning, I would say. It's almost like, it almost comes across as like a smash beer, like a single malt and single hop, or well, single malt maybe. It's got that very kind of pale malty, white bready character that almost dominates the malty side of things. Really not much in the way of sweetness with this one, but I think we will get a little bit more complexity out of it when we actually taste it, to be honest with you. The malt base is pretty much like a mix of different, you know, white bread, brown bread, and just that little bit of biscuit. In terms of the yeasty character, like at the back of the nose, you do get a little bit of that. It's like a little bit of an almost kind of farmhousey, white bread, bread crusty, crackery type note. So there is a good little bit of yeastiness coming out of this beer, which I think is quite interesting. The way that that goes together is pretty nice. But yeah, I don't know if there's really much else we can say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer, to be honest. Like I say, I think we need to let the flavour do the talking there. On the hoppy side of things, you do have a nice little bit of green component in here. When it comes to hopping in IPAs, you have to remember there are 3 different kinds of hoppings that you can do. You can do early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That's going to give you a deep, dank kind of green component to your flavour and aroma, and it's going to give you most of the bitterness in the beer. You've got the late addition hopping as well, which takes place usually within the last half hour of the wort boil. It gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, but it's going to give you that brighter green component there. And then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, no bitterness there. It's going to give you a brighter green component too. So yeah, these are all things that you need to think about when it comes to IPAs, because West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3 types of hopping, which is why they have that more deep, dank, bitter character. New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2, and these kind of more generic American IPAs will sometimes do a bit of both, to be honest with you. They'll take both approaches. But yeah, for me, the green component on this one, it's not overly dank in a sense. There's a little touch of earthiness in there. Part of me wants to say, just from the aroma, there's maybe mosaic in this one, because it has a wee bit of earthiness, and we'll talk about the fruitiness a little bit later on. But yeah, it's got that little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, some nice floral aromaticity as well, and then yeah, a nice little bit of floral aromaticity, wetter kind of grassy character coming out of the beer. So yeah, earthiness, herbal character, quite a bit of floral aromaticity. I think the more you smell the beer, actually, you do in fairness get a little bit of dankness out of it. Then you've got that nice kind of soft grassy component coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really, really nice. The green component, I have to say, I do quite like on this one. I'm very curious to see how that's going to translate into the flavour. But yeah, in terms of the fruitiness then coming out of this beer, for me, there is something just very familiar about this. I think I think the hop combination in this thing is going to be something that we've had quite a few times before, like Citra and Mosaic, or maybe Galaxy and Mosaic, something like that. Because it does have a little bit of that balance between tropical fruit and more kind of citrusy, zesty kind of fruit. So yeah, for me, I think there's a little bit of peachy sharpness in there, passion fruit, juicy mango, certainly wee bits of apricot, and yeah, there's quite a little bit of a kind of juicy tangerine orange. The slight earthiness and the orangey character in this one is what's making me say, that's what's making me say Mosaic. In honesty, the Citra, it could be, there's one or two hops it could be like Simcoe as well, because it has that, the soft passion fruit's quite prominent in there, and the apricot-y notes too, and that soft tropical fruit note is quite common with Simcoe as well. But yeah, in all, the aroma of this beer, I think, is pretty damn nice, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, interesting stuff. As I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because that is always half the experience with craft beers and whiskies and sakes and stuff. But yeah, I think it's about time that we try this one. This one is the Dank, a 7% IPA, not sure West Coast, New England, or just simply American, from Brew Classic. Nearly forgot the name of the brewery there, that's terrible. From Brew Classic in Kanazawa, Ishikawa Prefecture here in Japan. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanju, skål, cheers, kanpai. Ooh, that's pretty nice. It's good. That's a pretty damn enjoyable beer, I will say that. So, thumbs up to Brew Classic there. This is an interesting one for me, because I think you probably have to, just thinking about the kind of flavour profile that this one gives off, I think probably you kind of have to say this is a more almost generic American IPA, if you like, because it shows you a little bit of the, it shows you a bit more of the kind of green component of the West Coast and the more oily fruity characters, but then it's got the softer kind of bready notes and things that you'd expect to the New England. So I think calling this one simply American IPA is probably quite a good approach for it. So yeah, just need to keep that in mind. But I think this is really solid, so it makes me quite curious about the other beers that this brewery do. So yeah, let's do as we always do. We'll break the beer down, we'll describe the flavour a bit more in depth for you, and we'll just we'll see how we go. So yeah. So, middle third of the palate then. Backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely kind of fresh, white bready bread crusty character that I was talking about. If you go further forward on that middle third of your tongue, you get a wee bit of a more kind of, you get a very slight woody character out of this one. Then you have a bit of like Jacob's cream cracker, which I think is really nice. So yeah, you've got the white bready bread crust in there, the Jacob's cream cracker, and yeah, on top of that, you start to get the bready notes out of the beer. So there's a little bit of a sweeter wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one. I would say above the cracker, yeah, wholemeal brown bread. Then above that, you'll start to get that, I will say that brown bready character becomes more and more grainy into the aftertaste, which is quite interesting. But then, yeah, above that, you start to get the, above that, you start to get the kind of fluffier white bready character out of this beer, which is quite nice actually. The white bready side of the beer has a little touch of sweetness to it, which is quite interesting. So, yeah, the way that that goes together is really nice. The bready backbone that this beer has is quite nice. It almost has like an old school pale ale type vibe to it, this beer, in a sense. But it is 7% obviously, so probably some of the sweetness is coming from the alcohol in the beer. But yeah, above the white bready layer, you start to get the brown sugary elements out of this one. So there's a very slight layer of toast. There's a very slight layer of like toasted, very light sort of toasty brown sugars in this one. It's almost more like a kind of bread and buttery toasty brown sugar. So yeah, a little bit of a toasty, yeah, a little bit of toasty brown sugar in this one. And yeah, for me, beyond that, there's a little bit of yeah, a little bit of toasty brown sugar in there. Above that, you've got a circle in the middle of your palate there, which is where some of the brown sugar notes come out. So you have the toasty brown sugar, you've got a bit of the McVitie's digestive biscuity note underneath, then yeah, you've got that sweeter, oily, caramelly note right in the dead centre of your palate, and that is of course the boozy side of the beer. It does give you a little bit of, there is a very slight boozy bite with this one into the aftertaste, but I think it suits the overall vibe of the beer because you get the sweeter bread and little bits of brown sugar and things like that there. So yeah, that is the middle third of your palate. Don't think we need to say too much more about that, but certainly a very bready leaning IPA, this one. Yeah, so if you go to the back third of your palate, then as I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities, and generally speaking, sweeter flavours will come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. So yeah, for me, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the kind of brown bread in the base, the white bread on top of that, and I do wonder if there's a little bit of wheatiness, wheat in this beer, because you do get a little bit of bitiness in there. But yeah, the backbone of the back third of your palate is similar. You know, you've got the slightly drier side of the white bready bread crust, you've got the Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing on this one, then you've got the wholemeal brown bread, and you can feel that layer in there is a lot lighter, taller and more airy. You've got the white bready layer above that, which is a lot lighter, taller and more airy, and then above that you've got the more you've got the Jacob's, you know, you've got the more wheaty, white bready sort of note coming out of this one, which is just a little bit more sort of bite, yeah, there's a little bit more of a kind of bitey sort of thing in there as well. Yeah, so a little bit of wheaty bitiness on that back third of the palate there. Then you've got all the kind of yeasty characteristics just sitting on top of that, which is quite nice. So yeah, all in all, I think the way that the back third of your palate goes together is quite nice. You get a wee bit more dryness out of it, but on the yeasty side of things, you can feel the yeasty side of the beer has a little bit more of a kind of dense and sweet white bready character in the middle. Then surrounding that, you've got more of like a kind of farmhousey white bread, so you can feel that, and then it's like a crackery bread crusty note around the very edge of the yeasty side of the beer. So definitely back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So let's have a wee look at the green component. on this one then. So yeah, for me, the green component in this beer is again what you'd expect. There's that little bit of earthiness in there in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, it's got a wee touch of herbal character there. I do think mosaic in this. But yeah, as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel there's maybe a tiny little bit of pine resin underneath, but not a lot. But yeah, it gradually gets more kind of floral and aromatic and just a little touch spicy as you reach the front corners of your palate. But then yeah, around the front curve of the tongue, it's a bit lighter, more grassy, and then yeah, you've just got that little bit more zestiness to it as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, so green component in this one certainly has my approval, but let's go to the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things. So the border region in that, between that front third and middle third of your palate, again you get that little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and then a wee bit of a more dense, like wheaty white bread. I do think there's a bit of wheat in this one the more that I drink of it. But yeah, the base of that front third of your palate is the bread crusty character, then you've got the Jacob's cream character on top of that, and then yeah, bit of brown bread, bit of white bread, something that feels like a more dense wheaty white bread as well. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the fruity side of this beer then and see how we go. Yeah. So the fruity side of this beer is actually pretty nice. I think that's one of the really attractive. I think the malt and the fruit in this one actually go together very, very well. It's very drinkable beer, this one. As I've often said about Japanese craft beers, they're often very, very light and very drinkable. It's just the kind of, you know, it's just the mentality that Japanese people have about beer, generally speaking. But yeah, at the back of that, at the back of the front third of your palate, I'd say maybe a very slight touch of grapefruit, not a lot, maybe a very slight touch of peach as well. But then yeah, when you come further forward, you get a bit more of a kind of oily, mango-y character. There's a wee bit of like apricot in the centre of that front third of your palate too. And then yeah, as you move into the front half, the front third of your tongue, I think there's a little touch of like tangerine or mandarin or something like that in there. There could, you know, sabro could be an option for this one as well, but I don't get so much of the kind of coconutty type character out of this. There's definitely one of the more orangey hops in there, and there's also something that's a bit more kind of tropical as well. So yeah, it could be like Idaho 7 and Sabro or something like that, or it could be something a bit more classic like Citra or Galaxy and Mosaic. It's a bit hard to tell with the hops these days, to be honest with you, because there are so many. It used to be quite easy to play guess the hops back in the day, but now really it's not. But yeah, I think the way the fruity character in this one goes together is very, very nice. I think we can leave it at that for the flavour description, and we can just round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer, it's very much kind of mid-bodied, right in the middle of the spectrum. Carbonation is very smooth. It does have a very slight like dryness to it, this beer, into the aftertaste, but otherwise it's slightly oily and slick. IBU wise, I think this one's maybe about 50 IBUs or something like that. It does have a wee touch more bitterness to it, so yeah, 50 maybe, yeah, 50 IBUs seems a bit reasonable for this one, because you get a wee bit of bitterness in the back corners of your palate there, and a wee bit more into the aftertaste as well. But the malt base, as we say, a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a slightly drier sweetness on top. And then yeah, the further you go with the fruitiness in this one, I think the more citrusy leaning it becomes. But yeah, it's more tropical in the beginning and more citrusy leaning into the aftertaste. But all in all, another very, very nice IPA, this one. And you know, the quality of Japanese beer has come on a lot, I think, in the last few years. There's always been some very, very good breweries, but I think there's more new, very good breweries out there these days, and I've discovered that with, you know, a few of the new breweries I've introduced on this trip to Japan actually. So yeah, have a go at these breweries for yourself and just see what you think. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This is a really nice, more bready leaning IPA, this one. I think this definitely fits more the generic American IPA style category than being specifically West Coast or New England. So yeah, it leans more toward the West Coast, I should say that as well. But yeah, I think we can leave it there. This one was Dank, a 7% IPA from Brew Classic in Kanazawa, Ishikawa Prefecture here in Japan. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brew Classic as well. And we'll see about returning to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Sláinte, Skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll catch you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.